Hello, hello. Rachel Young, Mike Telem, guys, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate we're got from Israel and we've UK, but ultimately global reach for both of you guys and global experience. So I'm looking forward to talking through a lot of that. You guys have been involved in the world of fitness and technology for forever. So let's step back a little bit. We're going to get into, no offense, Rachel. We're going to get into it straight away. Rachel, connect the dots from us from where you started back in the day to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So mine's kind of been an interesting journey, and thinking about the question, um, where I'm at now is I can actually see that as where I should have been, from my first experiences in kind of physical activity and sport. Kind of wasn't very good at things at school, always put into the naughty box. And what I found that I was actually kind of good at, or where I felt I belonged, was more in kind of sport, team games, and I wasn't world class, but I was pretty good at it, and I liked being part of kind of group. And I think that sense of belonging that I really struggled to get while I was in my kind of teenage years at school, um, that I really found through the community and through sport is actually where I'm at now. Found my place in the fitness space.
Yeah.
So it started off in group exercise. Um, which was for me is just theatre. I'm in the entertainment business, so I
Yeah.
guess from sport to group training to exercise, theatre, and in those days, there was no real career pathway. So you were a good group X, you became studio coordinator. Studio coordinator, you were a fitness manager, and then before I knew it, I woke up and I had a company car, laptop. I didn't even know where my trainers were. That journey just went through from rather fitness to management. And so now I've kind of gone from individual club roles to global role with Myzone, business development director, looking after the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey.
Exciting countries as well. And I know you
Really
love it.
exciting countries, really exciting countries.
Mike, give us some more context from your side, because you're in a unique situation from the technology side with overlaps of this world of health and fitness and beyond.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So I started my career in tech in 98 or 99. I was actually waiting tables. Had a pretty rough bike accident. Uh, and uh, and people around me started getting jobs after doing a 1 month course in network essentials and things like that, because it was the first, what we later learned was the first tech bubble.
Mm.
So I was studying psychology in the university. So nothing, I actually studied a little bit of computers in high school and told my father that I will never, ever go back to touching a computer. I hated it that much. When I was much younger, I did do some competitive sports, played squash for many years as a kid and a teenager, was pretty good at it. But I think, and did some martial arts as well. The main thing that I learned from sports, again, when I look back, is losing, which is something you tend to do a lot in sports and in startups.
Yeah.
You actually lose most of the times and you win here and there. Everybody remembers the wins, but we can touch on that a bit later. So started in various roles in the Israeli tech industry, small companies, large companies. Founded my first startup in 2009. So I have a pretty nice rhythm. Started in 99, opened the startup in 2009 as the markets were crashing. That's another
Yeah.
trend of my history. Um,
Timing.
Went through the Via Dolorosa of bootstrapping for a couple of years, raising money, thinking it's going to get easier, realizing it's only getting tougher. Eventually sold that company after 5 years to an American company called Marketo. Then spent a few years there. And then right on the clock, 2019. So 99, 9, and 19. And again, financial crisis. If anybody doesn't think that there's a cycle to the global economy, that time it was COVID. We opened up Kemtai, which combines a lot of my previous, let's call it history, the guidance that I learned to appreciate from sports and putting time into doing things properly, whether it's the strike or the motion or whatever it might be when you're playing squash or doing karate. uh, with the fact that I have two herniated discs and a pretty bad back, probably related to squash
Yeah.
as well. And Kemtai, computer vision for physical therapy and rehab. I'm one of three founders, Mora Amitai, Naomi Karen, and myself.
Just double click on that for a second, because Kemtai, obviously I've partnered with you guys previously with Exi, and I love it. I absolutely love the purpose and technology with it. But it's unique to have a female founder and co-founder in relation to technology, and especially one that's such a global entity and one that's obviously healthcare and deep technology. You know, this is a very complex situation. So give us a little bit of context there, because it's amazing to have her as a global leader, but also very invisible in many ways.
Yeah, so Naomi, statistically, it is very rare to have a female co-founder. It's even more rare to have her focus on the tech and the product. You tend to see females more as either the CEO or maybe chief marketing or something like that. Naomi heads our product and R&D. Moore, who's the CEO, also dabbles with algorithms. He's a PhD in maths, but the product itself is Naomi. And I've known her for many, many years. We actually lived in the same neighborhood where I am right now, and our kids went to school together and even kindergarten before that. So we were very good friends, and I kind of had an eye on her from the beginning, thinking, maybe we'll do something one day. I knew more. Our other co-founder, he was already opening startups with her, so they were a startup power couple. You can say that. And when you get into the startup business, you start realizing what makes a good founder, and you very rarely see people that seem to match that.
Yeah.
Someone who's very smart, very hardworking, and very honest that you can trust.
Right.
The rest you can live with. They might not be the easiest people. They might not be the most social people, whatever. But if you have those three things, then you can really build something with them. And when the opportunity came, I left Marketo, and they both became available post one of their other adventures. I really pushed strong. It was a weird situation to join two people that I have known, but they've been working as co-founders for 15 years. So it's kind of like joining a married couple for good and for worse.
You're in trouble.
I never really spent time thinking she's a male or she's a female or whatever. I think that founders have more alike than their gender.
Right.
Because of the things you go through. I can see some maybe differences in style, some good, some bad, but I never gave it another minute of thought, but that's just because she's so smart and so strong that it wasn't an issue.
I mean, it's a great story, and likewise, I was surprised actually, because I had known Kemtai through when I met you, and then getting to know the founders, I was like, another amazing female, kind of just doing her thing. And Rachel, you've seen it over the years as well, like yourself doing your thing, but like typically not founder led, female founder led, or even female co-founder led in many.
Yeah, I think just to kind of jump back on something that Mike just said, it really made me think about me working in the tech space. So if someone had said to me, all those years ago that I would be in the fitness industry working in tech, I would have just laughed because I'm frightened of it. I'm not very good at it. Heart rates and those kind of tracking and devices and technology used to really make my brain explode, for want of a better phrase. So I think it's as much as I'm front and center of this text in technology, for me, it's all about belonging and community. Yeah. So I thought that was quite interesting when Mike's talking very much about tech and he didn't want to touch a computer again. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've just appreciated where I am actually sitting. So it's been through through the journey that we were talking about. It's been through growing up in the kind of the corporate side of the fence, but it's always been community, belonging, and a massive passion to get more people moving. And I had some inspiring leaders over my time and some inspiring I believe every example, you learn something everywhere. I've had some incredible leaders and some uh, not incredible leaders, but you learn from every situation.
Yeah.
I've had some incredible male leaders and incredible female leaders. So I guess the one thing that I could say was synonymous with the successful ones, or the ones that have successful as in they inspired and grew me and their teams around them, is that they cared about people. So it wasn't a male thing or a female thing. It's they
Empathy.
cared about that person that was sat in front of them.
Yeah. It's so important, isn't it? I know you're both leaders, again, with vast experience with it. Stepping back to your sporting background as well, because we look at some of the statistics and sport, obviously the lessons you learn in sport, especially as you Mike mentioned around failing, as you do in sport, you bring all those lessons through to sport. How do you think it affects your leadership style, Rachel? Because obviously it's your background. How does it affect your leadership style? Never mind the leaders that you've had.
Yeah, it's all about the team. And that I would say it all goes back to sport and teamwork. It's you're not the one that scores the goal or the goalkeeper. You're part of the team, and you will dribble down the pitch together to score the goal. So having a shared vision of scoring the goal or achieving certain KPIs, you get them and your team to buy into and understand the strategy, and then to go with you. And I think if you don't have that team approach, but really feel it and really understand it, yeah, you'll get to a certain point, but you don't actually have true success.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I think that you understand through kind of sport and sort of group activities is that you not only know what your player does, what your partner does on the pitch, for want of a better phrase, but you kind of know where they go to school, what they like to have for breakfast, what gets them out of bed in the morning, what makes them grumpy. And when you know that about not your teammates, but also your work colleagues, you just get the best out of everybody. People will go over the top for you.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point that the sport has 94% of females in leadership at least have associated themselves as an athlete and played sport at some point. And I've no doubt that the statistic is as high, if not higher, for male leadership as well, because of those lessons. Mike, when you look at the Middle East in general, obviously Israel is quite different as a culture. Give me some of the context from a Middle East Israel context that matters, that layers into any of this. Does any of it layer into it?
Well, in Israel, obviously Israel is a very liberal or a relatively liberal democratic country. As many people say, the only place in the Middle East where women have decent rights. And seeing female managers and executives and leaders is very common here. One of the first countries that had a prime minister, Golda Meir, many, many years ago before my time. And that was never considered to be a big deal even.
Right.
And one of the very interesting experiences that I have, we have a very long and successful process with a large HMO here in Israel, so they have 2.5 million members. We did a very successful pilot with them. And so I've been working with them for a year and a half. The head of innovation is a female. Her deputy is a female. And the CEO of the organization itself is a female. And first of all, I kind of noticed it, and that still is a thing to notice. So it's not that common.
Yeah.
And I have to say that it does feel differently. A lot of times when you're a startup and you go to an organization and their executives, in many cases, they try to minimize you, right? They try to make you feel like, well, you should even thank your luck that we put you in this meeting room with us, right? You feel less of that. I think it was less aggressiveness and less, I want to show you who's the man. And I've had situations like that with male executives where I had to first hit them back, not literally, but oh, well, excuse me, Mr. CEO of some Israeli company. I happen to work with quite a few American companies, European companies that are 10 times your size. And I hate having to go
Yeah.
through that.
Right.
That HMO and the whole vibe coming in and starting to work with them never had that thing. It was always positive. And I'm not saying all female executives necessarily like that. And some of them take on, I don't know if it's to say to take on more manly behaviors, because I think some of the behaviors that are considered to be manly, and now I'm talking on the male side, it's not manly. It's just when you're the boss, you have to be tough.
Right.
And when the female is the boss, she's tough,
Yeah.
regardless of her gender, right? But that was one example where I noticed that this is actually still quite out of the ordinary to see the full kind of chain of command being females, and they're considered the best HMO in Israel, and HMOs in Israel in general are considered to be one of the best performing health organizations worldwide. And even though Israel is small, both of our two largest HMOs would be top 10 in the US in terms of size. So these are no small organizations by any means.
Mm-hmm. And it's great to hear it in one way that, I mean, because with sometimes myself, I feel like, am I in the room? Am I seeing this? So when I hear it from like your perspective, it is important to acknowledge we are that little bit different, right? And there's an element of our neuroscience is different. But hopefully, and that sounds like what you're saying is that those leaders got the job because they're intelligent and they're good at the job, and the gender hopefully doesn't matter. And that's really what we want to get to, right? Is people are the best person for the role is put in the role that they deserve to be in and is available for. Rachel, go on, jump in.
So I think the only way that we're going to kind of keep doing this and keep improving things is to have conversations like this. You know, I've never met Mike, but to listen to your perspective, Mike, and the way that you've talked about leadership, it's been a breath of fresh air. I think the challenge that I've experienced is we're all in the same kind of small sandpit and hearing the same conversations. Unless we get some kind of conversations and input from the periphery to support, we'll always kind of be who we are. We'll always be in this same sort of challenging situation. I had a very interesting experience a couple of weeks ago where I was invited to an event, and it was called the Festival of Happiness in London. And I took myself there, and I was very much looking forward to going. My friend was launching a book. I walked in the room, and the first thing that I noticed was a Google head office, which was very cool. Yeah. And there's probably about 250 attendees. And the first thing that I noticed was how many women were there. You know, and you shouldn't notice that, right. But it was probably about 40 men. The rest was women. Now, I had some colleagues from the fitness side of the fence came over as well. And the two guys came, and they walked in and they were like, "Oh my goodness." And I said, what do you notice? And they went, "There's so many women in here." And I was like, "Yeah, welcome." Yeah. But it's, unless you step out of it, you don't realize how challenging our space is, how much work there is to do. And it's not the, it's certainly not the militant fly the woman flag. It's the right person for the job. Right. And I don't think we've been good enough at that meritocracy in our space. So I'm hoping conversations like this and meeting Mike and, Naomi, I'd love to connect with, I think will help move things forwards.
And this is the beauty, I think, of the podcast for me, is I'm lucky enough to have a network across fitness and sport and health tech and med tech and healthcare and so on. Because to your point is, if we can see the world through different lenses, we have different perspectives, and it's a part of the evolution of learning of what's happening elsewhere, and taking the learnings and the goods and the evolution from it. Rachel, I want to pass over for a second. With Myzone, give us some context for those people watching this that aren't in the fitness sector, that may or may not have leveraged Myzone before. Give us some context of what is Myzone, and if there's any detail you can share around the gender aspects there, please share.
Sure. So Myzone is basically wearable technology that makes you feel good about exercise. So it's a heart rate tracking device, which measures the effort and intensity that you put into movement. So Myzone doesn't care how you move. it cares that you move.
Mhm.
So for me, that's why I ended up here. It's probably one of the most inclusive environments that I've been able to work in with a product in the fitness space, because it doesn't care whether it's my mum or a professional athlete moving, it cares that you move. Uh, the interesting thing by the metrics that we use rewarding effort, it's not about the fastest person or the quickest or the
Right.
strongest. It's about who puts the most effort in. My old dad used to say to me when I was a kid, just put in the graft. Hard work pays off. Myzone strapline is effort rewarded. So it's almost like a bit of destiny there.
Love it.
Something like over 70% of our users are female.
Excellent.
So it's very much a female utilized product. And
why is that, do you think?
I was surprised. I can't answer that. I was quite surprised at those stats when I saw them. And then I wondered whether maybe it's because it is so inclusive, and maybe it doesn't actually care about the speed or how quick you are. Are you first? Maybe it's a different approach to competition.
Yeah.
So, and it's about feeling, makes you feel good about exercise. So I think there's probably a more female approach to the product. That said, it's designed by a Australian who was solving a problem that clubs had. And the problem was we could get people in, but we couldn't make them join.
Yeah.
We couldn't make them stay. We could get them in, but exercise is hard work. How do we make it more fun and more engaging? So, Myzone is a solution from the fitness world to the fitness world. It's not a tech company that's gone, ooh, I want a bit of this space.
Right.
So it's really got a heart and soul to the problems it's trying to solve.
It's excellent.
And I think also many people have said that the focus on fitness, even that word, has also done some damage, because the focus needs to be maybe first on do something.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be hardcore. It doesn't have to be high intensity, because sometimes if I'm supposed to do fitness and fitness is too much for me, then I end up doing nothing. Whereas it's great to do fitness and maybe some more specific things, but why don't you start with taking a walk, with being more active, with being more mobile?
Yeah.
That's part of, I guess, the formula. And it's interesting because in some ways, Kemtai presents a complementary approach where we also don't care so much about competitiveness with Kemtai, but we definitely care how you move.
Yes.
Moving is good. Moving correctly is better. But how can we help you do it in an easy way that you don't need to pay a personal trainer every time or a physio? And we did start with fitness, by the way. And how do you provide the guidance for someone who doesn't even want to go to the gym, maybe, but they do want to do it properly, and then maybe doing a 20-minute session is worth more than a 40-minute session because you did every move all the way and the correct way, and you didn't hurt your back and everything. So it's kind of another take where the guidance and the actual tracking combined makes this great. And that's another way of creating better adherence, which is always the problem with diet, with exercising, with a lot of these habitual goals. And the fact that it's interactive and makes it a bit more fun and tells you how you're progressing, not because you're competing with someone, just so you know that you've done it better than last week.
Yourself.
That stretch or that squat, and you're getting better, and you're doing it correctly, and it speaks to you. And all of this stuff, including what Myzone is doing, what we are doing, what others are doing, is trying to make it either easier or more effective for the same amount of time or more fun to move, which is what we're not doing enough of.
Mike's just hit the nail right on the head. That's absolutely perfect. I think we've done ourselves in the I love the fitness world. I also hate it. because we've done ourselves such a misservice or misjustice by our naming protocols, our perception of new year, new you, drop a dress size, 6 weeks to a six pack, all of that stuff. I had quite an interesting time not so long ago speaking to people in the kind of working in the mental health sector.
Yeah.
And there was a real appetite for them to get their customers, their clients moving. So I was having really good conversations, and they wanted to bridge this gap between kind of the gyms, the fitness world, and what they were doing with mental health. And what I was intrigued about was I spoke to 3 or 4 different people, and at the end of each of these conversations, I said to each of them the same question. I said, this is fantastic. There's clearly a real appetite from your side to join these dots, to build this bridge. I said, how do you train? Where do you train? And the answer from each of them was, oh my God, I don't do that. I don't go to the gym. So there was real shock for me.
Yeah.
But I realized the next time I asked the question, it was how I posed it. I was like, there's a real appetite for change. How do you move? What do you do? And they go, oh, I walk the dog, I go to Pilates, and I've recently started doing park run on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So it was about the movement and about the language.
Well, that's the reality of the week that we live in, right? In the month that we live in, the year that we live in, we're trying to do an awful lot of things. So between commuting and getting, whether you're at your sport or your fitness class or walking the dog or park running, thankfully we have a lot of options. We just need to continue to amplify them because we still have a phenomenally inactive population. I mean, we've less than a quarter of the population are actually doing sufficient activity, to be healthy. So we have a huge challenge here. So this is the beauty, I think, is the more solutions we can put to make it available to people, the better. And hopefully it becomes an easy choice and it builds into an active day and an active week, hence an active month. And then we have a much more, we've addressed, and obviously my passion often lies on the health side of treatment, prevention, management, and reversal of chronic disease. Then you mentioned mental health there. One of the best treatments we know for mental health is activity. So the beauty of this is it's not exclusive. The terminology is really important there. I think you're right. You talked about fitness, activity.
There's a massive disconnect, Grace. We sit in this world. I'm going to say I'm in this world.
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about joining the dots up, getting the more than 20% of the population moving, working on mental health. But actually, we're not speaking to the right people enough. So conversations like with Mike, with you, conversations on the periphery, rather than us sit here going, actually, we know what people want. They want X, Y, and Z. We don't have a clue.
Yeah, we got to connect the dots from a different
parts of absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, just touch on there in relation to Kemtai and the gender differences from your side, because likewise, obviously, it's treatment and it's doing mobility and movement, and you work with physical therapy and you work with physiotherapy and you work with fitness. What's the breakdown? Because Rachel shared there, it's over 70%, surprisingly, of Myzone users are female, which maybe it's a fitness class related scenario. But how does it work with Kemtai?
The split between the genders is quite equal because both suffer from musculoskeletal conditions in a similar way. I believe adherence is a bit better on the female side, and I can.
We do what we're told.
Yeah. Well, or maybe more patience, more understanding for things that take a bit longer.
Thickers, doers, we finished the dog.
I mean, I think I'm laughing
Sorry, Mike,
because Rachel and I are not really the women that do what we're told type of women. So we're not.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I'm not sure why compliance and adherence is actually better on the female side. But yeah, those could be some of the guesses. Obviously, we see the data, but not necessarily the reasoning. And look, there's a lot of differences between the genders. Some might be biological, some might be educational and sociological, which doesn't make them even a bit, weaker. And some might be good as a different style, and some might be changing eventually. I think that that's the main difference that we're seeing in terms of the people that use Kemtai and how they use it.
Right. And when you look at your customer base across the world, more male, more female, doesn't matter. I guess you said MSK just affects everybody globally. There seems to be no divide there, right?
Yeah, the challenge is quite similar. We're currently working in 4 continents. Um, Obviously, in terms of my direct customers, meaning the companies that integrate Kemtai into their offering, are still more male dominated. But you were one female founder that worked with us, and there's another in Australia that works with us. There were a couple more, still are a couple more in the US, but you still see a majority male dominated. And I think, yeah, a lot of that is probably the education or confidence or whatever it might be in terms of what females believe that they
Right.
can do.
And there's access to funding. I know you're talking to raise, fundraising later on as well, but obviously access to funding being a different challenge. We'll talk to a later point. Joys of fundraising.
Mike's making me think a lot today, and I think that you've got a mixed demographic of users, right? And you've got a mixed kind of board of male and female. I've been to a few meetings over the last month where we've been talking about group training and about programming, where the biggest percentage are women going to the classes. And I've been the only person that's been female sat around that table. And I find it's quite interesting that you've got heads of fitness, head of product, head of marketing, head of all of these different sectors these different departments saying, this is what the women are going to want in the class. And it just, I'm sure we can get so far with those sort of decisions, but actually we're missing a big chunk. We're missing a big chunk by, really getting under the skin of what does your audience want? What do they really want?
I think we're still missing having more females in decision making or executive positions. That's the fact. I think some of it is, and I do see that with various female colleagues, employees, friends, where on average, they seem to be less inclined to make black and white decisions, for instance, right? They seem to have less confidence. And it's not that the male that's making the decision is saying, I know for sure. He just feels more empowered to make a decision based on what I know right now. And the female that I'm seeing in a similar situation doesn't feel that self-empowerment to say, that's the data that I have, and I'm just going to make a decision. And I assume it's the socialization and growing up as a male in a way that makes me feel like it's okay for me to I'll just take the decision. I don't know if it's going to be right or wrong. Obviously, right now, I think it's the better decision to make, but not for sure. I know it's not for sure. It's not the overconfidence. It's just, I'll make the call. And I do think that fewer females have it, or females have it in a less strong way. And that's maybe why we still don't see enough females in these leading positions, because they don't feel empowered to, obviously, many of them do, but on average, less.
Right. Yeah. No,
Mike, you're right again. Sorry, Grace, I'm steaming in there, but Mike's right again. We need people like you, Mike, to go actually to speak out about that and say, actually, maybe they don't feel so not confident enough to make a decision or to speak out. But by you opening that forum up and opening the doorway, it really does make a difference for people. It wasn't in this. I've been in the fitness world for over 30 odd years. And when I've been speaking on panels or at events and saying how I've actually felt in the sector, my kind of colleagues would come up to me and say, I never knew you felt that way. So I've done myself and women probably a misjustice or a misservice by not speaking out. But actually, when the guys come up to me and say, hey, I didn't know that, or ask the question. So I think we've all got to take a bit of responsibility to help each other, but also to be supportive, ask questions, try and understand each other. There's a brilliant book that I read recently called Rebel Ideas.
Rebel Ideas.
Matthew Syed book.
Okay.
And it's about diversity of thinking, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think that should be on every kind of boardroom table. Just read that and then decide how you're going to make a decision.
Peg that one in, because it's a really good point. I mean, I think you touched on there. Socialization is one thing, right? But also there is a neuroscience difference here. And Rachel mentioned a book. The one I read recently was The Confidence Code, which talks about the neuroscience and the difference. Because you're right, Mike, absolutely. It's an element of confidence where we just don't have the same level of confidence to go, what if I make a decision and it's the wrong one? Whereas reality is, I said, the chances are high that the decision's right or wrong. It's that kind of always the situation. So yeah, there's definitely a neuroscience, but then there's a socialization factor. And I know myself and Rachel do public speaking. But I often, when I'm asking other women to speak, there's an element of confidence again. They're saying, no, I won't speak. I won't get on the stage. And yeah, Rachel, I know you're like me. The two of us are kind of going, get up on the stage. You're fine. Your competence is high. What you're talking about, something you've done for 20 years or 30 years. It's not competence. It is the element of being confident and just building that discomfort with it while you get to be there. And it's not that men on stage aren't nervous about it. They're absolutely. I mean, it's a nerve-wracking situation.
I'm not sure that I'm right. I'm just less concerned about being wrong.
Yes.
And it's a great way of putting it.
It's interesting. You've also made me think about kind of nature nurture. When I'm listening to this, Mike, and I had 3 brothers. Growing up, all my cousins were boys, so I was the only girl in like 14 boys.
Right.
So I was in a very different environment when I was dragged up, and it certainly served me well.
I think so. Naomi, my co-founder, also had older brothers that were very competitive. She always says how she always felt in competition with them, not good enough, but it drove her. And in my opinion, I think she overachieved what they have, even though they're very competent. But so it's a similar scenario. And I wonder if the women that do get more into those positions have grown in a more male environment and therefore got the same vibes and got the same messages and felt more inclined to behave that way than others.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We definitely can't underestimate the messaging that we give genders. And I see it with my nieces and nephews now. It's still different. It's better than it was for sure, but it's still different. We're still minding and caring and empathetic. But then again, our neuroscience is also different as well. So there's a balance to be had here. And I think it's very important to say as well is, as a female in leadership, I don't want to be a man, right? I don't want to also, pull down men from the top. I want to work with great people, with great brains, intelligent, articulate. And male, female, or otherwise, or non-binary, or whatever else, doesn't actually matter because business should be about business. And I think if we can focus on that, then hopefully the gender aspect of it does take care of itself. We just need to be very conscious a little bit of that. Not everyone has the same upbringing, and not everyone has the same, I suppose, education around take the risk. Say it, make the decision. The world won't end if you're wrong.
So I think it's not that these are not necessarily male characteristics. These are leadership characteristics, and males happen to be in most of those positions. So the combination, since the days where we just had more physical power, but these are leadership. You can argue on leadership styles, right? But the typical leadership style of charisma and aggressiveness to some extent and cold decision making and taking tough decisions and taking risks, that's about being a leader or a founder or a top executive. That's not about being a man. Now, unfortunately or not, 80 or 90% of people that have done that are men, so we kind of connected those things. But from what I've heard, one of my first experiences, by the way, maybe I was lucky. One of the first proper tech job, I worked in an economics company because I studied psychology and economics. So they brought me in as someone who knows economics and can hook up a computer. And I was doing very basic stuff there, but the CEO of that company, and he used to create many like macroeconomic projections for whatever 25 years in the future. Obviously missed all the big stuff, but that's economy for you. It's very good telling you that it rained yesterday and exactly why. But anyway, he used to take me to his top meetings with leading banks here in Israel, just to make so someone can make sure that the cable is connected properly and the PowerPoint works and stuff like that. So I was able to sit down, and even back then, so this is 20 years ago, there were the legendary CEO of one of the two biggest banks in Israel was a female. So again, you asked about Israel. That's 20 years ago. She was the leader. And I remember my feeling coming into that meeting. You see like 20 men sitting there, and then she comes in and everybody like quiets down. And she felt like she was in a kindergarten. She was like, shh, shh, you be quiet. Yeah, okay. Yes, what do you have to tell us about this and that? And she's like a mythological person, and I think she's not alive anymore, but she was like, she's like a big deal here. And she was a female, and she was just as decisive and aggressive and kind of short and to the point. And, everybody thinks 10 times before he raises his hand to say something. And she was a female, but she was the leader of the either first or second largest bank in Israel. And she was managing them with a very strong hand. It's the role, not the gender.
As the bank required, the business required.
Yeah.
Mike, I think we have to sorry, Grace, to interrupt. We have to give people the chance. I think that's the really important thing. We have to recruit and employ on meritocracy, the right person for the job. It made me just think about my mum, who was the only girl. She was a dentist, and she was the only girl in her year to graduate to go to university and study. And all the guys graduated, and she would tell me about her story at university and how she had to fight not only for her place but all those years through her study. And when she got out, the guys got a job. She had to go and volunteer on the school run service. So she was never given the chance. And what Mike's story just there just really made me think about, going back to my mum is not that long ago. We have to give people a chance. We have to recruit the right person for the role on meritocracy again. Yeah. And I suggest that everyone that listens to your podcast, Grace, goes back and looks at their boardroom and looks around the table and goes, what do these faces say to me?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the skill set and the diversity of thought that's around the table is absolutely. Rachel, because you've had such a great career and a varied career as well, if you're looking at, either the leaders in the industry or people that are wanting to be leaders in the industry, kind of coming into the industry new or kind of fresh out of college, what would be the lessons or the main points you would like to land to make sure that they're thinking and working in today's world, not the world of the past, but today's world and the future?
I would say you need to trust yourself, get yourself a mentor, learn from example of people that have been successful. And I know that, I've had experiences of reaching out to people for help, and some of them just were like, no, they were too busy to. But actually, if you can get someone who has been successful and can share those experiences with you, a coach and a role model, don't take no for an answer.
Yeah, that's not like you anyway. I love it. Mike, as a leader in the industry and a global presence and a global leader, what would be your messages, particularly to actually, males in the industry, in any industry, but also those coming out of college and so on? What would be the lessons you'd like to land and share about for the future?
Well, one general thing, regardless of gender, that I always felt very strongly about is don't rush to study in the university. Start working. Figure out what's interesting. People spend so many years studying only then to start working and realizing maybe that's not what they want to do. I think it's a mistake, especially today where so much information and ability to learn is available in various ways. And I think you should only spend time in university once you kind of have a good feel of, I've been doing this a couple of years. This area really interests me. So that's one thing that's general that I always felt very strongly about.
Interesting.
No matter what your mother or father wants you to be, a lawyer or accountant or whatever, try to focus on things that do things. And yeah, keep your mind open to people regardless of gender, of ethnicity. It is difficult. I have found myself sometimes meeting someone of a specific color and against my best will already thinking something. I'm like, wow, that is strong. And I can't, I've been raised the way I've been raised. Nothing very crazy, but if I'm honest with myself, like I could see myself already making my mind up before the person even opened his mouth or whatever. Or so try to at least be aware of those things. Meritocracy is very important. I think there's a very thin line between enabling more people, whether it's of various social background or gender, kind of giving them the stage. But on the other hand, we don't want people who can't do the job to do the job just because, and there's a lot of debate about that. And I think there's never a perfect place. It's kind of a swindle between, okay, now we've done that a bit too much now. Let's move back to meritocracy, but let's not do that too much because we want to open it up. Again, if you take the Israeli example, like, and then it's unfortunate to speak about things like army right now, but females can do almost everything that they want. That was not the case 20 years ago. That was not the case 40 years ago. And the organization itself is only benefiting. Right? It's still a thing where, oh, it's the first commander of that level that's a female. Oh, it's the first, so they're still working their way up, but everyone that makes it and others can then see her and say, wait, if she can do that, then I can do that. And I still remember when I started the military, there was the first female that was not accepted to fighter pilot school. And because it was not open to females. This is not in the 50s. Okay.
Right.
And she sued at the High Court of Justice and she won and they had to open it up. And since then, there are many female fighter pilots. So we can't think that it's all done. We can't think that there's equality. There isn't equality. The salary differences for similar jobs and different genders or different social backgrounds is still here. Those differences are here and they're not fair by any means. And on the other side, I would also tell females, demand. Ask for what you deserve. You'll be surprised that in many cases you'll get it. They're not going to give it to you if you don't ask for it, because you assume you shouldn't get that much. You ask for it, you'll get it. And it's fine to be a bit more aggressive. Again, I don't know, aggressive, confident. There's various ways to kind of frame the same thing. Well, I said a bunch of stuff, not very clearly, but hopefully.
No, that makes total sense. It makes total sense. Really, really, really does. And that's important. I mean, this is the beauty of it as well, is having someone like with your experience and your leadership. It is important and it is important to be heard. Rachel, do you want to add to it?
I was going to say, be humble. So in whatever you're saying, ask for more money, do all of those things, push to get the job, don't take no for an answer, but do that in a humble way. And as in, there's a without an arrogance or an edge. I think that, the only way we're all just people, right? And it's just life. So let's just make it the best we can for those that follow and us right now.
And what you triggered there for me is you recently introduced me to Shadan and Maha, who are out of Saudi Arabia with Lijam. I mean, humble isn't even the word, but amazing leaders that are really driving not only business change within their organizations, but cultural change across the country of Saudi Arabia as well. And they're humble, but likewise, they just get the job done, right? They're getting the job done and they're driving it as they would at any leader.
And that was an astounding experience for me. I had preconceived ideas about I would work. I said I worked in the Middle East. I'd been to Dubai. I met Shadan in Dubai, and she was like, Rachel, Saudi Arabia is not Dubai. And going out there, the perception of what I thought I was going to experience was 100 miles away from what I actually experienced. Yeah. I'm a firm believer in the past doesn't equal the future. And, if we don't change our attitudes, nothing will change. We've all made mistakes. But what you learn from other people, other sectors, other regions is absolutely incredible.
I love that. The past is not the future. I love it. And it's so true. It's so true. With that, conscious that we have, Shadan and Maha, we just called out there. Give me some other emerging or established leaders, Rachel, that you can help call out, because I want to make sure that we're calling out and ultimately paying it forward for the amazing leaders that do exist. Because to Mike's point as well, there's less visibility, partly because head is down, kind of getting the job done and may not be stepping up into those roles, but should and can and hopefully will with our support as well as with the changing environment. So who do you like to call out?
Yeah, I'm going to say I've got two. One's just outside of the sector that I met at an event. Angela Hernstein, who's a disruptor, an innovator. What she's learned through the University of Life on resilience is incredible. Absolute entrepreneur. So I'd like you to, I'm not going to spoil her story or share it, but that is an outstanding head turner definition of success. So Angela's awesome. And then also probably my boss, my friend, Elaine Jobson, who was one of the best leaders I've ever had the pleasure, privilege to work with, who actually, when I look back, all the skills that made me successful and the habits, rituals that I learned about people that I still use now are gold. So Elaine Jobson of Jets Australia is pretty outstanding.
Pretty outstanding. And I know she has a recent book as well, which I look forward to reading. It's on my to-read list. Fantastic. They're brilliant. Mike, can you help kind of call out who you see also as great leaders in the industry or any part of industry globally?
Well, I think I called out already while I was selling from the HMO here, Maccabi, so I would call them out, first of all, as having the culture of having female leaders across the organization and in very non-typical, so not DB of HR, but actually head of innovation, things like that, and of course the CEO. So Nurit, which is the head of innovation that I'm working with, and kind of balances being very articulated and specific and knowing what she wants, and on the other hand having a great relationship, and it's something that I really enjoy working with. Again, a startup working with large organizations, you expect fighting or you expect some kind of arm wrestling every now and then,
right?
And that's not happening, and I like that. And I'll stick to that just because I've really gotten to know them and work with them. So at least my recommendation is based on a lot of history already.
And I'll definitely ask you for an introduction, because what I'd like to do as well is to amplify their stories separately as well here, because there's so much great stuff happening. And Rachel, I love the fact that you called it out there. The past is not the future. And we are in a changing world, and we're in a changed society, and we're much more aware now than we were 3 years ago, never mind 20 years ago. So it's continuing to work towards the future, which is exciting. And I'm thankfully you guys are on this journey as well. So it's a pleasure to work with you. I know, Mike, we've worked directly, and Rachel, hopefully we're going to see each other in Riyadh in February again in person. If
100%.
Before then, as we look at meeting Shadan and Maha also in person, and hopefully Elaine and others there as well. So it's a pleasure to connect with you guys. It's always a pleasure to hear. And again, very articulate, intelligent, experienced leaders. That is it's inspirational to many more hopefully listening. So thank you.
Yeah, no, and thanks for pulling this together, Grace. I think to have a different audience, two people, it's just it's really exciting. So thank you, and thanks, Mike. Great to meet you.
Same here, Rachel, Grace. Appreciate it very much and enjoyed this hour.
Thank you for listening. You can connect the dots with others by sharing this podcast with colleagues and teammates. At wearethecollective.world, you can join a professional network, avail of professional development, and engage your support team. We collaborate on the shared pursuit for gender balance in health and business. Until next time, keep connecting the dots.